I don't talk about that stretch of highway like it's just asphalt anymore. Because there was one night out there when the road didn't just take something from somebody, it gave something back. And I still don't know how to explain that without my voice getting a little quieter. And if you've ever driven long enough to hear your own thoughts louder than your engine, you'll understand why I never forgot it. My name's Clay. I've been hauling freight across the U.S. long enough that the lines on the pavement feel like a second language. I've run I-70 through Colorado when the wind could shove a trailer sideways. I-40 through Arizona when the heat makes the horizon shimmer. And I-10 out of Texas so many times I could tell you the exit numbers from memory. And I've seen what the highway can do to people when they get careless, unlucky, or just plain tired. That's why what happened to me that night hit different, because it didn't feel like luck at all. It felt like the highway itself decided to stop taking for once and just return something that had been missing for years. It was late spring, the kind of night where the air cools fast after sunset, and the desert holds on to the smell of dust like it's a secret. I was westbound on I-40, pushing from Amarillo toward Flagstaff with a dry van full of packaged food for a distribution center. Nothing fragile, nothing flashy. Just boxes, stacked like quiet promises behind me. It was around 2:30 in the morning, and the world was the color of deep navy, with stars so sharp it looked like somebody sprinkled salt across the sky. My headlights carved a clean tunnel through the dark, and the rest of the world stayed politely out of reach. The cab smelled like diesel, black coffee, and that faint plastic warmth you only notice after hours with the heater on low. And the only sound was the engine's steady hum and the tires whispering over the grooves in the pavement, pulling me forward mile by mile. I'd stopped at a Love's outside of Tucumcari a while back. Not because I needed fuel, but because my eyes were starting to feel like sandpaper. And I don't gamble with fatigue anymore. That parking lot was full of sleeping trucks, marker lights glowing like fireflies in neat rows. And the store had that familiar mix of fried food and cleaning solution that never fully leaves your clothes. A young guy at the counter asked where I was headed, the way they do, and I told him Arizona. He nodded like it was just another word in the dictionary, but I saw the way he looked at my face like he was trying to guess my story. I paid, filled my thermos, and on the way out I passed a bulletin board by the bathrooms with a few old flyers pinned off. Most were job ads and lost keys and help needed nonsense. But one caught my eye without me even trying. It was a faded memorial card, corners curled, taped there like someone didn't want it to fall. A black and white photo of a woman smiling, a date, a name, and underneath in big letters that had been traced over again and again with a pen. Please call if you know anything. I don't know why I stopped, but I did, and I read it twice. And then I walked out into the night with that face stuck behind my eyes. The CB was quiet most of the way after that, which isn't unusual at that hour. Every now and then somebody would mutter about a bear sitting at a closed way station, or someone would warn about a slow car with no lights. But mostly it was silence, the kind that makes your own breathing sound loud. I kept the radio low, too, not because I wanted quiet, but because I could feel myself getting into that zone where the truck and your body start moving like one thing. That calm where your hands stay steady and your mind drifts, but you're still paying attention. It's a dangerous comfort if you forget what it is. That's why I do little checks like rituals. Mirror, gauges, road ahead, trailer sway. Mirror again, and every few minutes I'd look at the time and tell myself, next rest area, I'll pull in. That's the lie we tell ourselves to stretch another mile out of a tired body. About 40 minutes after the loves, the land opened up wider, flatter, emptier. Out there, I-40 feels like it's floating through nothing. No trees, no buildings, just scrub brush and rock, and the occasional set of headlights. Far off in the other lanes, like a planet passing by. I passed a sign for a rest area coming up in 10 miles, and I remember thinking, good, I'll stop, wash my face, reset. That thought was still forming when I saw something on the shoulder ahead that didn't belong. At first it looked like a piece of tire tread. Then it looked like a bag. Then it looked like a person sitting down, hunched, too close to the white line. My foot lifted off the throttle before my brain fully caught up, and the truck's tone changed from a pull to a glide. I felt the trailer settle behind me, and suddenly the whole cab got quieter. And in that quiet, something inside me whispered, slow down. As my headlights reached the shoulder, I realized it wasn't one person. It was two shapes. One was a figure crouched low, almost hugging their knees, and the other was something sprawled out beside them like a coat tossed on the ground. No hazard lights, no parked car, no flare. Just two dark shapes in the middle of nowhere at 2:30 a.m. on a highway that eats mistakes for breakfast. The logical part of me wanted to keep going. You don't stop for strangers on the shoulder out there, not without thinking. Not because you don't care, but because you've heard stories, and you've seen setups, and you've learned the hard way that good intentions don't stop bullets or bad luck. But I was already slowing, and I could feel that other part of me, the part that still believes in doing right, reaching for control. So I eased into the right lane, turned on my hazards, and coasted past them by a few 100 feet, just enough to see without being right on top of them. And then I pulled onto the shoulder where the gravel crunches under your tires like you're breaking a rule. I sat there for a second with both hands on the wheel. engine idling, heart beating harder than it should for a guy who's seen plenty. The windshield framed nothing but darkness and that silver ribbon of road. My dash lights glowed soft green, and the smell of hot metal and warm air filled the cab. I grabbed my flashlight and my reflective vest. I didn't open the door right away. I watched the mirror, watched the shapes behind me, watched for another car that might come flying up too fast. The highway out there isn't forgiving, and the shoulder isn't a safe place to get brave. Finally, I stepped down, boots hitting gravel, wind brushing my face with desert cold. My hazards clicked steady like a heartbeat, and my trailer markers threw little orange puddles of light behind me. I started walking back, flashlight beam bouncing, and every step felt like it was taking me deeper into a story I didn't write. When I got close enough, I saw the crouched figure was a woman. Not old, not young, just worn. Hair pulled back, hoodie too thin for the night, hands trembling like she'd been holding on to fear for too long. The thing on the ground wasn't a coat, it was a backpack, split open. Papers spilling out like somebody had dumped their life in a hurry. She looked up when my light hit her face, and for a moment her eyes widened, like she expected me to be something else. I kept my voice low and steady, the way you do with a stray animal or a scared kid. You okay? My words disappeared into the wind, but she heard them, because her throat moved like she was trying to speak and couldn't. She pointed down the shoulder with a shaky finger toward the dark, like the darkness itself was what she was afraid of. And then she whispered one word that made my stomach tighten. Help. I asked if she was hurt. She shook her head. I asked if she had a car. She nodded, but her eyes went wet, and she looked away like the answer embarrassed her. I followed where she pointed, sweeping my flashlight beam along the shoulder. And about 50 yards ahead I saw the glint of metal down a shallow slope. A small sedan, half off the embankment, nose down in the dirt. Not flipped, not crushed, just stuck like it had slid and given up. No lights on, no movement. The driver's door was open, hanging there like a mouth that forgot how to close. I looked back at the woman, and she was standing now, but she didn't come closer. She stayed near her spilled papers, like they were the last thing keeping her connected to reality. I told her to stay put and keep her eyes on the road, because cars still flew by out there like they didn't know other lives existed. Then I climbed down the slope, boots sliding in loose dirt, and every second I felt that quiet pressure of time, because on a highway, soon is never soon enough. When I reached the car, my flashlight beam moved across the empty driver's seat. No one. The passenger seat was empty too. And that's when I noticed a glove box hanging open, stuffed with papers, and one of those small framed photos people keep in cars. The frame was cracked. The photo was of a woman smiling, black and white, The same face from the memorial card at the Loves. I froze so hard I felt it in my spine. The night went still around me, like even the wind wanted to listen. I stared at the photo until my eyes started to sting, and all I could think was, that's impossible. Then my flashlight beam drifted, and I saw something on the floorboard. A laminated card, bent at the corner half under the seat. It had a name and a phone number printed bold. And at the top, in block letters, it said, "Please call if you know anything." My hands felt heavy when I picked it up, like the plastic carried weight that didn't belong to it. And behind me, up on the shoulder, the woman made a sound that wasn't a word, but it pulled me back like a hook. I climbed up fast, heart thumping because I suddenly needed to see a face again. When I reached the shoulder, she was standing in my trailer's marker light, and the orange glow made her look half real, half made of shadow. The papers around her fluttered like nervous birds. I held the laminated card up, voice barely working. "Is this you?" Her eyes flicked to it, then to me, and for a moment she looked like she might say something. But she didn't. She just shook her head slowly, almost sadly, like she was tired of explaining. Then she looked past me, down the highway, and her whole body stiffened. A set of headlights was coming fast in the right lane. Too fast. And the driver wasn't moving over. That's the thing that kills people out there. Not storms or cliffs. Just somebody not paying attention for 3 seconds. I reached for her arm without thinking, to pull her back toward my truck, toward safety. My fingers met fabric, cold, thin fabric, and then something that made me suck in a breath. Her arm felt lighter than it should, like grabbing a sleeve that wasn't fully filled. And the instant I felt that, she moved, not running, not stepping, just shifting like a candle flame in a draft. The speeding car roared past, close enough that the wind slapped my vest against my chest and my trailer rocked slightly on its suspension. I stumbled back a step, adrenaline surging, ready to curse, ready to scream, ready to thank God we didn't get hit. I turned my flashlight beam back to the spot where the woman had been standing. She wasn't there. The papers weren't there either. The backpack was gone. The shoulder was empty except for gravel and the white line and the dark. For a second I thought my mind had snapped. I swung the beam up and down the shoulder, left and right, like I could catch reality slipping away. Nothing. Just the night. Just the hum of my idling engine. Just the clicking hazards. My throat went dry. I walked back to where I'd first seen her, and the only thing left on the ground was one single sheet of paper pinned by a rock so it wouldn't blow away. I knelt down and picked it up carefully, like it might crumble. It was an old copy, faded, wrinkled, a missing person flyer. Her face, her name, and the date she disappeared. It was years old. I stood there on the shoulder of I-40 with that paper in my hand, and I could feel my heartbeat in my ears louder than the wind. I didn't want to say it out loud, because saying things makes them real. But I couldn't deny what I was holding. I couldn't deny the photo in the car. And I couldn't deny that I had just touched someone who felt like a memory, trying to stay solid long enough to be noticed. I went back down to the sedan and called 911. Voice steady, because you learn to sound steady even when you're not. I gave mile marker information. Told them there was an abandoned vehicle off the road, possibly tied to an old missing person case. The dispatcher asked questions, and I answered them like a man reading from a script. But my mind wasn't on the questions. My mind was on that woman's eyes, and the way she looked past me, like she knew what was coming before it happened. My mind was on the fact that if I hadn't stopped, nobody would have found that car tonight. And if I hadn't slowed down when I first saw those shapes, I might have been the one who didn't make it. Past that mile marker. The state trooper showed up first, lights painting the desert in red and blue that didn't belong to nature. Then another. Then eventually a county unit. They walked the shoulder, took my statement, looked down the slope, shone lights into the car like they expected someone to step out. They treated me politely, but you could see the skepticism in their shoulders. A trucker calling about a car off the road, a missing person flyer. A story that didn't quite line up. I didn't tell them everything. I told them I saw someone, thought they needed help, and then they weren't there. That part alone was enough to make the trooper's eyebrows lift. He asked if I'd been drinking. I laughed once, short, humorless. Sir, I'm hauling freight. I haven't had anything stronger than gas station coffee in 2 weeks. He didn't smile, but he did take the flyer from my hand, and when he read the name, his face changed a little, like he'd heard it before, like the highway had carried that story longer than people had. They ran the plate. The trooper came back to me a few minutes later and said, "Quiet. This car's been on a list." He didn't say much more. Cops don't like to promise answers. But he said it like it mattered. Like something that had been stuck might finally move. They had me pull my truck forward off the shoulder for safety, and I sat in the cab with my hands resting on the wheel, watching the lights down the slope flicker like distant fireworks. My dash cam was still recording, that tiny red light still blinking, and I found myself staring at it, like it was going to tell me what I'd just lived through. When they finally cleared me to leave, the trooper told me, "You did the right thing stopping." His voice softened a fraction. Most people don't. I nodded because I couldn't speak without my throat tightening. Then I eased back onto the highway, merged into the right lane, and let the truck pull me forward again into the dark. But the dark didn't feel the same anymore. I didn't sleep the next day. I tried. I parked at the Flying J in Flagstaff after my delivery, pulled my curtains, laid back in the bunk, and closed my eyes. But every time the engine noise outside changed, every time a truck door slammed, I'd see that woman's face. Not as a ghost, not as a horror story, just as a person who'd been waiting too long to be found. My phone buzzed later that afternoon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because I hate phone calls when I'm tired. But I did. It was a detective from New Mexico. He asked if I was the driver who called in the abandoned sedan off I-40. I told him yes. He asked where I had stopped before that stretch. I told him the Love's near Tucumcari. There was a pause on the line like he was looking at something. Then he said, slowly, that flyer you described, the one you said you saw at the truck stop, it hasn't been up there in months. My stomach dropped. He asked, are you sure you saw it? I swallowed. Yes, sir, I said. I'm sure. Another pause. Then his voice went lower. Well, we pulled the VIN. That vehicle matches the missing person case. He didn't say, we found her. He didn't say, we didn't. He just said, that vehicle matches. And then he thanked me like it mattered more than he wanted to admit. I sat on the edge of my bunk after that call, staring at my boots like they belonged to somebody else. I thought about how many times I'd driven past things on the shoulder and kept going. How many times I'd told myself it was safer not to get involved. How many times I'd let the highway take what it takes. Because that's just what it does. But that night, it felt like the rules bent. It felt like something or someone stepped into my headlights just long enough to pull me out of my own routine and make me stop. And I can't shake the idea that the highway didn't just want a witness. It wanted a helper. It wanted somebody to see what was there. Because when people vanish, it's not just bodies that disappear. It's answers. It's closure. It's the last page of a story that never got finished. And out there, on that empty stretch of I-40, it felt like the road finally decided to hand one of those pages back. A few weeks later, I drove through Tucumcari again and stopped at that same Love's. Same smell, same bright lights, same tired faces behind the counter. I walked straight to the bulletin board, by the bathrooms, heart biting like I was about to meet somebody I used to know. The memorial card was gone. The missing person flyer was gone too. The board was full of new papers now. Lost dogs, job offers, room for rent, the usual. For a second I felt stupid, like I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I noticed a fresh sheet pinned near the center, bright, white, crisp edges. It wasn't a flyer. It was a thank you note. Handwritten, simple, and taped up like someone wanted strangers to see it. It said, "To the truck driver who stopped on I-40, thank you for bringing our family answers." No name, no case number, just those words. I stood there longer than I should have, reading it over and over like it might change. And the longer I stood, the more I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like relief for someone I'd never met in daylight. I walked back out to my truck with the desert wind cutting across the lot. I climbed into the cab, closed the door, and for a second I just sat there with the engine off, listening to the silence inside my own space. I looked at my dash cam and at the miles waiting ahead, and I thought about how the highway has taken lives. It's taken fathers. It's taken sons. It's taken good people, and left behind wreckage and paperwork and a phone call nobody wants to make. But that night it gave something back. It gave a family a direction to look. It gave a case a final thread to pull. And it gave me a reminder that a man can drive 1,000,000 miles and still be called to do one small thing that matters. So now when I see something on the shoulder, I don't always keep going. I don't always stop either, because I'm not reckless. But I pay attention in a way I didn't before. Because sometimes the road isn't just a place you pass through. Sometimes it's a place where a story has been waiting for years, and all it needs is one set of headlights to finally be seen. And if you ever find yourself out there on a lonely stretch of highway, feeling like the darkness is watching back, just remember this: the road can take a lot from you, but every once in a while, it gives something back.